Can you please state your name and can we film you?
My name is Maheen Sahu, and yes, you can film me.
Are you aware of the NRA debates in Senate last week?
Yes.
And what are your thoughts on background checks for guns, expanding them or decreasing?
I definitely think we need to expand background checks on guns. I think that even though the media might have hyped up and like really put emphasis on all these tragedies that happen with guns, the underlying issue is still there, that we need more gun control to stop these kind of tragedies and just make sure that we're keeping our own citizens safe.
What are your thoughts on the NRA?
I think that the National Rifle Association is a perfectly legitimate organization. I have nothing against it existing, but I think that they should do a lot more to encourage safer ownership of guns and make sure that even though we all do have the right to bear arms, that we all are also getting our background checked and making sure it's safe for everyone in the community.
So currently in California, the NRA, or the background check is a 10-day process where you can pretty much say yes or no to any of the questions, and whether or not you're telling the truth goes undetected. Do you think it's strict enough?
I definitely don't think that it's strict enough in that way. I think there should be more accountability, especially since guns do have the potential to cause a lot of widespread harm. So I think that if we made stricter measures and just held our citizens more accountable, that would be the best way to go.
Currently, you can purchase a gun from a gun show without a background check, and many internet sales do not require background checks either. What do you think about that?
I think that should change, definitely. I think that we should have to have background checks whenever you get a gun, regardless of where you get it from. I think the principle of fairness and equality should be present there, and that we should make sure that regardless of where someone gets a gun, that they're getting it safely.
This is going to be edited, don't worry.
Okay. I hate you.
Okay, so the NRA presented their opinion that teachers should be armed in schools, and currently some schools have passed that. A school in Missouri recently passed that and said it was okay. What are your thoughts on arming teachers?
I definitely am against arming. I am definitely against arming teachers in schools. I feel like that's a gateway to even more stuff.
You should say as a soon-to-be teacher.
Yeah, I was going to say, you're going to be a teacher.
Okay.
You're going to be a teacher next year.
Okay. Okay,
I'm going to ask you it again. Ready?
I can't help but be intrigued by this conversation.
Thank you. Am I giving great answers?
If you'd like to be interviewed, you can be next.
Yeah.
I have class, otherwise I would.
Are you really intrigued? Do you have thoughts? I would love to hear them.
We'll talk about this later.
Okay. Ask me it again.
So the NRA has proposed that teachers be armed in schools, and since you're going to be a teacher next year, would you feel comfortable if that were the case in your school?
As a soon-to-be teacher, I'm going to be teaching elementary school in San Jose through Teach for America. I personally would not feel comfortable with having guns in my classroom, whether it was me or if it was another adult who somehow was in the possession of a gun. I just feel like the risk is so big when you have young children all together in a classroom and you just throw a firearm in there. There's only one thing that will really happen, and that's someone's going to get hurt. If we want more security in schools, I think there's better ways to go about that as opposed to arming each individual teacher. And I think that will promote safety a lot better than that proposed method.
What was I going to ask you? What do you think are the current homicide trends in America? Do you think that they're going up or down?
I'm pretty sure I read an article that said that homicide trends are going down. I just think that the media really hypes up whenever those kind of events happen, so it seems as though there's a lot more in this day and age, but I don't think that there are.
Are you more supportive of protecting Americans' right to own a gun or to control gun ownership? Keep in mind that the NRA's, their reason for their existence is to protect Second Amendment rights.
I think that Second Amendment rights are really important, and I definitely do want to protect people's right to own a firearm, but I also think that mission can exist alongside the mission to promote safe gun ownership. I think the idea of them being two extremes, you can't have gun ownership without having, really lax restrictions, I think that's a misconception that people have about gun ownership, and I think that we can, through Senate and through the Houses of Congress, figure out a way to make it work.
Do you anticipate the Senate passing a bill reforming gun control? in 1994, Clinton banned massive assault rifles, and that expired in 2004, and since then there hasn't really been any other bans installed. What do you anticipate coming from Senate?
You know, it's hard to say. I think stuff that gets passed through Senate really depends on who the senators are. I know that, like, Abby Gifford, who was shot by someone at, like, I probably butchered her name, but...
Gabby Giffords?
Gabby Giffords, yeah. She had a quote after the Senate didn't pass that bill last week, and it was just like, obviously, if, like, the Senate's not going to change this law or, like, these rules, then we should change the Senate. And that quote kind of stood out to me because it's true. Like, if we don't have people in Senate who believe in, like, more strict laws for gun control, nothing will change because we depend on those representatives to, like, talk for us. So I think that there is hope that through legislation we can have stricter gun control, but I think it also depends on the Senate climate at the time.
What do you think is the current public perception of the NRA? Do you think that overall it's negative or positive?
You know, I think it depends. I think in a lot of areas in the South, you're going to find that the NRA's perception is really positive. I think you're going to find that if you head up more into the Northeast, where there's mostly, like, Democratic states, it's going to be negative. As far as national opinion, I think you can't really use that because you have such polarized areas, but I think they can do a lot to improve their image if they did, like, side a little more with, like, the public opinion on wanting to keep kids safe. Like, that's in everyone's best interest, so they can, like, try to emphasize that more instead of trying to be more polarized.
What is your personal opinion of the NRA?
I support the idea of the NRA. I think having an organization that protects Second Amendment rights is important. However, I do disagree with them on how extreme they are and how they've changed in their mission almost, and how they're trying to go against these bills that are trying to put restrictions to make guns safer. I understand the idea of owning a gun, but I think that with that power, you need to have some sort of accountability, and that would come from these regulations.
Would you say that your perception of the NRA has changed since the Newtown shootings?
I don't think that my perception has changed. My political perception, I think that stayed relatively the same, but I think that overall as a country, we tend to look to blame people when tragedies happen, so I think it's unfortunate that the NRA, like, did have so many people turn against it, but I think they could have done a lot more to try to fix that perception instead of, like, adding stuff on top of it.
Okay. Thank you.
Yay!